Hi, I'm Jim Gary and welcome to Penelope's Workshop. This video is a continuation of the ABS delete from my 25-year-old workhorse-based motorhome. I previously removed the ABS unit as it wasn't working and the parts to fix it were not available. So now I'm modifying the brake lines to fit the new Wilwood Proportioning valve that replaces the ABS unit. So please remember, I'm a biologist, not a mechanic. I'm showing you what I did, not what I think you should do. So please consult with a professional mechanic before doing any brake work. Now, I have 5 brake lines to modify that go into the proportioning valve. The output side of the valve has 3 connections, one for the rear brakes, one for the right front brake, and one for the left front brake. The input side of the proportioning valve has 2 inputs, one from the front side of the master cylinder and the other from the rear side of the master cylinder. I show a lot of details on the first brake line modification, but just the final result on the others. I also bleed the master cylinder using a bench bleed procedure, but did it with a master cylinder mounted in the motorhome. And finally, I got to actually start bleeding the brakes. As always, I welcome any comments or suggestions you may have. If you found this interesting, there are links to my other videos in the description below. So please like and subscribe. Now let's get on with the video. So if you look up here where my finger is, this is the new, I put this in an earlier video. This is a 1/4 inch line. This goes to the rear junction. In the back here is a thinner one. That's the 3/16 one, and that just goes to the right front wheel. But this one is the one we're going to work with now. So I've got that hand threaded in for now, and I don't have to put the clip. I've got the clip here. This is the clip that will eventually go on, but we'll do that later. But now I'm going to move to the other side and take a look at what we've got on there as far as bending this tubing. The camera is still looking forward at the proportioning valve, but I'm in front of it looking at the other end of the brake hose that I just connected to the junction behind the valve in the last clip. You can't see much from this angle, but I took measurements as to how to bend the tube to make it fit to the rear brake output from the proportioning valve. Next, we'll go back to the bench to bend the tubing. We're back in the shop, so here's my mark. I made 2 marks on here, but the outer one is where I want to be the center of that bend. And I've got information on, I've shown how to bend and flare tubing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. I want it to be 90 degrees. That's about right. And then it's got to go the length of a Sharpie and then turn again. So I want it to turn inward. So I'll mark that there. So this should about do it. And I can adjust it a little bit by hand. This is soft. This is that copper alloy tubing. So there we have a nice set there. So now all I have to do is figure out where I'm going to cut this, and then I'm going to put chafing gear on here, and then I'm going to put a flare at the right length. I've got my flaring kit out, and here's the mark I made. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that tubing off right about there. And again, I've got some leeway because of that flexible tubing, so I don't have to make I have a little room to move if I need to. And again, I've shown you how to cut and flare tubing in other videos. I'll link to that one. So there, it's off. And now the trick is to clean the end up. So I've got this chafing gear. It comes in these big coils. It's not very expensive. And this is kind of chintzy. It's kind of thin. The older stuff was much thicker. But anyway, I'm going to put that on. It'll just protect the surface. This is fairly soft stuff. And then of course I've got to put on the nut to go into the proportioning valve. And there's still got to be room for it to fit on here, so I may have to cut off a little bit of that chafing gear, but let's just see. So what they say in the manual is that copper has to stick out, or the tubing has to stick out about the same as the shoulder on this, and that's about right. And it's also got to be really tight, because if you don't make it really tight, it'll slip when you're flaring. So I'm going to crank it down till the shoulder hits the edge of the bar. I think that's about right. So I can take that off now. And then I simply remove the flaring tool. And then this goes in without the flaring tube, and that's what makes that double flare. So with the double flare, you first flare the tubing out like this, and then the second flare puts it in like that. So you got a double wall on the flare. I think that's how it works. That looks pretty good. Let's see what we got. Yeah, that looks great. So that should be a good flare. If you make the flare not flared enough, it'll leak. If it leaks, I just have to probably redo it, but I'm going to go put it in and see how it fits. Just to be extra careful over the metal chafing gear I put on there, I put some plastic as well. Here's the tubing with that extra wrapper on it. It looks like it came in just fine. It might be a little blurry from where you are. Worked pretty well. It's in there. I was able to hand thread it most of the way in. And I'll do the final tightening a little later. But let's go on to the next one. So here's the second short one. Made a loop around just the way I measured. And here's the end that connects into the junction place. So this is going to be for the right front caliper. So there, I'll go put it in and we'll take a look at it. So here's the first one I put in. It goes along there to there. And here's the second one I just put in right there. So it's looking pretty good. I'll have to do some cable management, but these can be moved different angles. I can tighten it at whatever angle I want. So I think it'll work out. I'm pretty pleased. So I'm ready to install the third hose, and this is the last output side of the proportioning valve. So this one connects on this end to the left front caliper, and then this end here will go into the ABS. And again, it's got that little bit of flexible hose, and then it's got about 6 inches there, which would be plenty for me to mark and bend to fit into that next hole on the forward side of the proportioning valve. So I've already done the one that goes out to the rear wheels. I've done the one that goes to the right front. So this is the one that goes to the right left. The one I just put in is right here. I've got it hand tight, and I'll tighten it with a wrench later. So that's there, the middle one's there, and the far left one is there. So I got all three in a row. These are all the outputs from the proportioning valve. Front part of the master cylinder, and here's the master cylinder. I've just got a bag over it because I've got open fluid there and don't have the lid on it. So it's going to go there, and it's behind here. So now we're looking up on that cross beam that the proportioning valve is attached to, and you can see those two blue stoppers. The one to your left is the one we've got to feed this into. So it looks like I can make it as short as I can and just have a 45-degree angle. So I'm just going to mark it and bend it, take it back in the shop, cut it off, and we'll put a flare on it, and off we'll go. So the left-hand stopper is what I've got to remove. That's this one, because this is the one that goes to the front brakes. And here's the fitting. And I'll have to get in there with both hands, but that's where it's going to go. I'll show you when I get it done. It was really hard to get in. So my finger's pointing to it, that nut right there to the left of that blue plug. It's just a 3/8 inch nut, and it's just really hard to wrap your fingers around, get enough force to get it started. But you always have to be careful, because the last thing you want to do is cross thread one of these things. So I went ahead and fed the final tube. Here's the pipe going into the master cylinder. So this is for the rear brakes. And if you can see, it's the 1/4 inch thicker pipe that originally went to the rear brakes. So we're going to go to the other end up by the valve and screw it in. So here's the last fitting. I've got a blue cap on it, but it's got the angle on it that we wanted, and it's going to screw in right where that blue silicone plug is. So I'm going to take that plug out and get it screwed in, and I'll come back. Okay, so they're both in there. There's the one and there's the other. The only problem is they have a tendency to cross right here. So I'm going to have to get a plastic spacer to put in there, but they sell those for brake systems. And again, I'll have to come back through and tighten all the fittings up and everything. There's a lot to do before I actually bleed the brakes. But I think the hardest part's done, at least as far as the brake lines go, as long as they don't leak. I'm getting set up to do bench bleeding, except I'm doing it in the vehicle because I can't. It's hard to take it out because it's attached to this bracket, but it should work. So I've got one hose going up on the rear, and it goes up and loops back into the reservoir, and the same thing on this front one. It loops around and goes back. And I just bought a kit for bench bleeding, and I can't say much about this one because I can't make it not leak a little bit, but we'll see if we can get the air out. I'm going to hook up the camera so you can see it, and then I'll go up and pump it and see if the air bubbles stop after a while. As I went through the bleeding process, I had to check for leaks at all the fittings and tighten them as needed, as I didn't want to over tighten them, and I had to make several rounds of this. Also, I had to redo one of the flares at the proportioning valve because I couldn't get it not to leak. There, so you can see what's going on in there. So I'm going to go pump the brakes for a little while and then come back. So I did 10 extra pumps just in case, so I did 20 altogether. And now I've got to switch over to the real brake lines from these plastic ones that I moved up. So I'm just pouring brake fluid to top up the reservoir because I don't want the reservoir to run dry. Unfortunately, you'd be looking behind. Okay, I think that's good. How much fluid do I have in there? Yep, plenty of fluid. The rear bleeders are 8 millimeters and very difficult to reach behind the drum. I found this long offset box wrench that did pretty well. The front bleeders are 10 millimeters and much easier to reach. I initially tried to use the OMT power bleed, but I couldn't get a seal on the lid provided by OMT for my particular master cylinder. I've heard that the OMT system doesn't work well on the GM master cylinders with the large rectangular reservoirs as on my motorhome. So my neighbor came over and thankfully he pumped the brakes for me. And as you can see in this example clip, we got good bleeds on the rear drum brakes, but we got nothing from the front brakes. During the bleeding process, I've had persistent problems with leaks at some connections, and I've had to periodically tighten leaking connections as I go. I even had to replace the flare at one connection. Now the rear brakes bled very easily on both sides, but I couldn't get any brake fluid at all out of the front brakes, so I think I need to bleed the front part of the master cylinder again. But I'm leaving town for a few days, and when I get back, I'll pick up where I left off, and hopefully the next video will show the completion of this project. I've put links to the other motorhome related videos I've done below. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're interested in similar videos, please like and subscribe. Bye.